It's rather hard, to get on the stage after the Amazon guys, but I'll try to do my best. Taras, don't laugh, you're next, so we're good. So as you can see, the good thing about DENT is the fact that not only the big guns participate in it, the project also supports some of the smaller players who can also contribute and give their value to the project, which is especially important, and we are happy to be part of it because we are engaged and we contribute, and you will see how exactly. So many of these things were already spoken about, but I will make no exception. So what actually differentiates and what makes the DENT project special is the fact that we honestly try to rely on the kernel, on the Linux, on its vanilla, mainlined, upstreamed version as much as it is possible. This, of course, has positive repercussions that we are going to discuss a little bit later, but the point of it is that you actually have something that is supported by the whole community. So everything stands behind it, and it's very important to try to keep up with it as much as possible. So it's not only the Linux kernel, it's also some external projects, as it was announced. So there is a whole ecosystem that makes the DENT project so great and hopefully very successful in future. We now have great use cases from Amazon, but naturally the other participants are always wanted, needed, and required. So when you combine all these things and when you put it on a very high level, it honestly looks really, really simple. However, it gets very complicated once you try to dig a little bit deeper, okay? So all the things that we downstream or fork, sooner or later have to end up somewhere, They can either end up in our own repositories, never being published and never being disclosed to the public, or they can be upstreamed, because when you are not upstreaming, when you keep everything to yourself, you are inevitably creating a technical depth. What this means in practice, that let's say that we decide to lock our Linux kernel version, that we decide to lock everything that we've been discussing on the previous slide, okay? And we can say, okay, fine, this is working perfectly at the moment. We have all set up, everything is brilliant, everything is fantastic, we are performant, we are secure. However, the time passes, we apply our own patches, and then we have that standard, forward porting, back porting dilemma. So in 5 years' time, a new chip, a new ASIC, new silicon is getting out on the market. We really think it would be a great asset to be supported in the DENT project, and there is a particular piece of it that is no longer compatible with it. Now, we either have the option, to backport the necessary drivers to what we are already using, or we have an option to forward port everything to the main line. Now, you can only make a bet or an educated guess which one of these things would probably be more expensive, In any case, whichever you pick, you will end up with a significant cost. The point being, we are really trying to participate in the upstream. There is an upstream working group as well within the project. However, participating in the open source projects and trying to upstream the kernel, although it seems to be practically identical because it's an open source and you need to patch it one way or another, well, unfortunately, upstreaming kernel gets a little bit peculiar. So for all of you baseball fans, if you remember that famous saying of Leo the Lip, So I'll use it and paraphrase it. So upstreaming is like a church. Many attend, few understand. So as it goes, it does require a particular set of skills. These skills are not only and not exclusively technically based. So yes, it's a code, that's fine. You have to display it somewhere, that's fine, but it really requires, first of all, seeing a bigger picture. After seeing that bigger picture, what you need to do is design a generic solution, something that will be applicable in the wild. You cannot let this slip in a way that you do it as far as you see fit, as far as you see appropriate. And there is also an issue of, clear communication and effective communication. There are a lot of situations where people try to approach to the upstreaming of anything, and then they get discouraged, in a cycle where you actually have to do some initial work, then you make the submission, and then you have that never-ending cycle, of waiting, addressing the comments, making the resolution, and finally merging it. That can be very discouraged. Why? Because psychologically we are all very different. Some are shy in front of the audience, some are not. Some want to display their names, some do not want to display their names. In any case, however you decide to go, or whichever path you decide to choose, it inevitably requires substantially more effort and substantially more difficult path of doing things. But what this allows us is that by applying the changes that we are doing within the DENT project, we're actually enabling the project to carry on in future without being worried that we might stumble upon an issue later on, effectively allowing the community to accept it, allowing the community to onboard to it, finally making the community broader, making the user spectrum more broad, which is the point of open source and which is the reason why we are all here. So this really gives us an advantage over some other project. This is not the only network operating system in existence. Of course, there are plenty more, but this one really is peculiar, and with all the help and with all the engagement we are all investing in it, it gives different options to its potential users. Do not forget that your standard Linux patching stuff looks like mid-90s. We still have our IRC channels. Things are still done by email. So, sometimes it can even be off-putting to younger people who were not, like onboarded to the way of BBS type communication, that sometimes we use. In any case, some of the mainline planned activities, and I think that Taras will have to say much more about this later on. Will you? Oh, you'll help me out a bit. So it's support for PoE, I2 controlled CPLDs, U-boot secure bot support for DENT switches, and of course, multiple other things to come. So all that being said, how many of you here, if I might interact with the publicity here, how many of you have been engaged in the upstreaming in general? Okay, except you're not allowed to raise hands. Okay. So as you can see, what I actually wanted to show here, people who are engaged in this are in minority. There is a good reason why they are in minority, because as I've said, apart from technical skills, apart from everything that you were taught and that you actually acquired as a technical skill, it requires a completely different set of prowesses that you need to invest and deploy within this kind of communication and this kind of work. So that being said, since I'm a bit running out of time, if there are any questions, comments, wishes to join the upstreaming working group.
You want to talk about the current one, or
What? Do you want me to talk about what?
Oh, the ones that are going on right this second.
Which ones?
The end cells or
No, no, no. But if you want to add something, feel free to join me here. You know, we don't want to run people off. So this is let's stop here. Okay, thank you all very much. And oh, come on, it's not fair. So you are in a conflict of interest because the vouchers are in your possession at the moment. Yeah, so, come on, let's not do that. Sorry? Yeah, we made a plan, and I'm not sure. I think that's Robert from our side is doing that, but I can fill you in with more details later. If that would be all, I would like to give a word to Taras.